Hello monsters and monster enthusiasts, I'm Monster J Art and welcome to my channel. So in today's video I want to continue my shorter makeup and body paint tutorial series, this time explaining the dry and dry blending technique with water activated paint. So basically I will first explain when to use this technique and then do a demonstration on how to do it. Before we jump into the subject, just some quick reminder, you can give a like and subscribe to the channel for more art tutorial and art related videos. You can also follow me on Instagram to see pictures of my makeups and my drawing, and you can find the link in the description. So now that's being said, let's talk about the dry and dry blending technique. I explained in my last video about the wet on dry blending technique. That is the technique that I use the most often, that is my default technique, the one that I use like 90% of the time, but there's some circumstances where it's not the best technique. Especially the wet on dry technique sometimes take a little too much space or blend the colors a little too much. And sometimes I just want to do shading on a very narrow area, or I want to have just a pinch of the darker color without overtaking the lighter color. And in that case, that's when I use the dry on dry blending technique. Basically, by applying your makeup dry, you transfer way less of it and you pick up less of it on your brush than if it was wet. So that's one of the reason, or one of the appeal of the dry and dry blending technique. So I will show some example of makeups where I use the dry and dry technique a lot. My favorite example or usage of it is when I'm doing something like a mask or an armor, where you have like metal plates that are on top of each other and the one on the top casts a shadow on the one beneath. For that very small shadow I want to use just a little pinch of black, and I will apply it with the dry and dry technique. Other than that, sometimes if I'm doing something really geometric and I want to add some shading on the upper part of the plate or the shape, I will also often use the dry and dry technique to apply just a little pinch of black or gray or dark brown or dark blue, a color like this. So yeah, the dry and dry technique is really good to make very tight and narrow shadows. So now that being said, let's do a demonstration of the dry and dry blending technique. So now we're in overview mode for demonstration of the dry and dry technique. So this time I already prepped my hand. I applied a base layer of gray. Also, to make it dry faster, I used a hair dryer on cool heat to dry it faster. So I will be using the Marin Paradise paint in Storm Cloud Gray and black, and I just want to add just a little pinch of black on the top to make, as I said, like a plate casting a shadow on another plate beneath. So first question you may have about the dry on dry technique is, it's water activated paint, so how can you do a dry on dry technique with water activated paint? So in fact the technique would be more appropriately called barely wet on dry, because I'm still using water, but I'm trying to use as least as I can in order to perform the technique. So normally, if you watch my wet on dry blending tutorial, normally I use these kind of brushes to blend colors together and to apply the body paint, but here, since I want to add just a little bit of black, I will use this brush instead. As you can see, it's a way smaller brush. Also, important thing about the dry and dry technique is you may have more chances of removing some of the body paint while applying when blending. So make sure that your base layer is thicker and you have good enough coverage. So maybe like here I applied 2 layers of gray to make sure that I have enough coverage, because during the process I may remove some of it. So first, when it's time to wet my brush, I want to make sure that the metal part won't reach the water, because then I can collect some water at the base of the bristles and it may ruin my dry on dry technique later on. So I really want to put just the bristle, on top of the bristle, in the water. So I'm just dipping the tip of the bristles, then I'm removing the excess by dabbing it on the paper towel. Then I take my black makeup and I dab. Instead of just swirling around like I would do, I'm just dabbing gently, and I'm turning my brush to make sure that I have paint all over on all sides. Then I will apply it by also dabbing gently my brush on top of the gray. And as you can see now, I turn to apply the rest of the paint. So for this technique, you really have to be more delicate. You can also do very tiny, gentle brush strokes like this to slowly bring the black towards the gray. And slowly but slowly, I will also grab some gray on my brush. Here, I'm not rotating my brush anymore because I do want to get some gray on it in order to blend the colors together. So I'm still have some black, some gray, they are mixing on my brush. I'm gently bringing the black toward the middle. Also, now as you can see, I have more, well, you don't see it that much, but I do have some more gray body paint on my brush. So if I want to blend a little bit more, sometimes I also love to do some of those side motion to kind of help to blur the lines. And then I can go back, so I rinse my brush in the water. Here, because I want my brush to be very dry, so what I love to do is I will put my brush on the paper towel, I bend the paper towel over it, I put the bristle under my finger, and I gently pull the brush to make sure that my bristle get dry and flat. So now I can repeat the process. I put just a little bit of water, remove the excess, dab in the black body paint, and then I repeat the process starting from the top where I want my black to be the most intense. Then I'm slowly moving toward the center, slowly grabbing some gray along the way. Now I think I had maybe a little too much black, so doing some brush strokes, doing some side motion to kind of try to blur the lines. Also, you can then go back and grab some gray also with having a pretty dry brush. Here, in fact, my gray is still a little bit wet, so that's why I don't grab water again. It's still wet from when I applied my base layer. And then I'm doing a similar process, applying it, dabbing, doing some horizontal or side motion to try to... And yes, I mean, it's not... I think it looks better in real life. I think my camera is maybe picking too much the black and you see a bigger contrast. I don't know why it's still wet there. I think it's still like on some paint stuck on my hairs. But yeah, that's how you perform the dry on dry technique. As you can see, you have to be to take your time. It's a technique that is more delicate. As I said, you use it more in narrow spaces. If you want to have a tight gradient, when you don't want to mix the color together too much, and that's how you perform it. And as I said, you repeat as much as you need until you get the desired result. But the fact that you're working dry, I think you get more control, but it's harder to spread the paint. So that's why the dry and dry technique is so good when you're working on tight and small areas. So yes, this was how to perform the dry and dry technique with water activated paint. And this is how you perform the dry on dry blending technique with water activated paint. So if you have any more question about this technique or any other technique that you want me to cover, or question about body paint in general and makeup, you can leave it in the comments down below. It can give me inspiration for upcoming tutorials. So I hope you really enjoyed the video. If so, please feel free to give a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye!